Happy gloomy morning to you, Brakken. Is it dark and stormy where you're at?
No, it is bright and shiny for the first time in probably a week.
Huh. Not here. It's drab. But I'm happy to be talking to you, and I have something I want to share with you right off the riff today.
Is it a haiku?
No, but it is something on my phone that is typed up, which I think you're going to find interesting, and so will our listeners. So, you know how we tend to use two phrases somewhat often on this podcast, and you know where I'm going with this. I already see you smiling. And we had somebody slide into our DMs telling us the origin of these phrases that we've often quandaried. And one is, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And there are many ways to skin a cat. And we're like, both of those are horrible sayings. Nobody should throw out babies in any circumstance. And like, how many ways is there to skin a cat, and why would you anyways, right?
I know one of the two. I do not know the other one.
Well, did you read our Running Public direct messages this week?
No. In fact, I am loving the fact that you're covering it.
Okay. Which one do you believe you know the answer to?
I believe I know baby with bathwater. I have zero clue about skinning the cat.
Okay, well, I don't know if these are true, but I figure because in past episodes, we've wondered these things. A couple of times we'll say those phrases off the cuff and then be like, wow, what the heck is that phrase? That's a weird phrase. So, Serhat Ozturk, one of our loyal listeners, sent me. He was doing some research, apparently, for us. All right, baby out with the bathwater. You ready for this? Let's see if you're right. It says, baths consisted of a big tub filled with hot water. The man of the house had the privilege of the nice, clean water, and all other sons and men, then the women, and finally the children. They would bathe in the water in that order. Last of all, the babies. By then, the water was so dirty you could actually lose someone in it. Hence the saying, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. What do you think?
Oh, there's a lot wrong with this, isn't there?
Is that what you thought it was?
Like 3/4. I knew the whole hierarchy of the men got to bathe first and the baby was last, but I thought the finisher was just like, when you're done with the task or you're thinking about other things, don't just forget the baby's in there and throw it out since it's the last one to go. I didn't realize it slipped underwater and you couldn't see it. It's just dirty, which is very inattentive parenting.
Yeah, and I don't know how far back this predates, so I can't speak to the time period whenever this was assumed. But anyways, that's the don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I suppose
if you've got 8 kids, one slips under there, you'd have no way of knowing.
Working in the fields all day, full of dust and dirt and machine grime. Pretty dingy bathwater, I suppose. I would assume the baby would have drowned at that point.
As a man.
Not to go there, but I mean, you'd think baby's head would be above water at minimum, so you'd never throw it out with the bathwater, but go ahead.
Well, babies are very buoyant. Yeah. Shockingly buoyant.
All right.
Like if you're ever in a shipwreck, just hold on to a baby. You're set.
We got to stop. Okay. We're going to cross some lines here. So, next one. There are many ways to skin a cat. Okay. So, the posed question.
Do you have a guess? Prior to reading this, did you have a guess what that could mean?
I didn't. And this makes sense to me, this explanation. So, I'm on board, but I did not. Did you?
Okay. No, other than maybe there'd be many reasons to skin a cat, not ways.
Well, this comes from a PhD in physics in solid state from University of New York Graduate Center. Anyways, this says there's more than one way to skin a cat. Exactly how many ways are there to skin a cat, and why would you want to? Poses the exact same question that we ask. It says originally.
Is this a Mark Twain quote?
Yes, it is. Stop it. Where'd that? You read the message.
I still don't know what it means.
It says originally.
I don't know what it means, but
all right. Originally, the phrase referred to catfish, Mark Twain said it, but I don't know if he was the first. The catfish were skinned before they were eaten. The reason probably is that some people don't like the skin of a catfish. So there are many ways to skin a cat, mean a catfish. And as an avid fisherman, I agree there are many ways to skin or fillet a fish, and this would make way more sense to me as common term, referring to fish other than felines. So I'm on board with this answer.
Yeah, I can. That tracks for me. Have you eaten catfish? Your own catfish, not like at a restaurant?
I have. It's not my favorite. Why?
No, the only time I've prepared catfish, we accidentally shot one when we were bow fishing.
Oh.
And brought it home, and we decided to bake it. And I baked it whole. I left skin on. Mm-hmm. And that was certainly a mistake. So I wish I would have known this that earlier.
You need to skin your catfish. Yeah, they got the slimy, rubbery outer coating. It does not enhance anything.
Very slimy.
And it's muddy. The flesh close to the skin gets kind of muddy and soft, so you want to get rid of that too. Mm. This isn't a fishing podcast, but nonetheless, we had to fill you guys in on these because, I don't know, felt good to kind of have an idea where these phrases came from. So do you have anything you want to update the running public on before we dive into today's topic?
I'm going to apologize very quickly. Not apologize. I'm going to clarify. When I blurted out Mark Twain's the man, I meant more like his lifestyle and his writings. I understand he has a lot of very offensive phrases and quotes used in his books because he lived in a time when the treatment of black people was a lot different than today. And so there's a lot of very, very racist things he said, and I know I'll get messages about it. So not all of Mark Twain is the man, but his writings and his life were pretty astounding. He was extremely, if you took his words in our day and time, they were extremely racist.
All the original pioneers, unfortunately, lived through times that are not like today, and they probably had some fringe,
correct,
fringe lifestyle and opinion habits in which we would not approve of today's age.
Yes.
All right.
But if I've learned anything over the course of this podcast, it's that's the type of phrase we're going to get I will get messages about. So I'm getting ahead of it.
Well, sometimes when you teach people things about stuff they didn't ask for, like these quotes and other things, you miss the mark once in a while. A slip of the tongue. It's okay, Brakken. So, let's bring us into this, and then I'll let you kick this thing off however you want. But we are getting near the end of our Run Your Best series. What did we start with? We did the mile a few weeks ago. We did the 5K. We did the marathon last week. And now we're going to cap off the pure run side. We have yet to decide if we're going to do mountain trail or how we're going to approach hybrid, but we probably will address one or both after this. But this is the last purist, we will call it. But this one includes the trail potentially, and that is the ultra. How to run your best ultra. The ultra gets gray. It gets very gray and blurry because the ultra can be to infinity and beyond, 50K. And up, which becomes even more elaborate and nuanced. It's a wide range of distances. Could be done on the roads, the trails, more often the trails than anything. But we're going to split hairs on the ultra today for the next 45 minutes to an hour. So what do you think of the ultra here? Is this one worth dissecting in your eyes, first of all? And I know it's a weird question, but I want to hear your answer to that direct question.
Absolutely. Because there's I guess the two types of ultras, but really there's three. But there is the type of ultra which is just a marathon but longer, and then there is off-road, off the smooth trail. There is ultra running, and then there is the classically thought of ultra running, where you may not be running the entire time, and you cannot train for them the same way. You can, I should say, you're allowed to, but your results will probably not be desirable. So it is absolutely 100% worth spending time dissecting how to train for an ultra.
All right, I'm going to ask you a hot question here. I have an opinion on this one. Is it easier to run, race, and nail a road marathon or is it, in quotes, easier to run, race, and nail a trail 50K, which is, in quotes, only 5 miles further, give or take? What do you think is easier, in quotes?
Run, ultra is easier. Race, ultra is easier. Nail, marathon is easier.
Okay. I personally believe
it is way easier to be successful on the trails because there are so many variables that most people get it wrong, and you don't have the same talent or depth of field that you're competing against. So going out to complete an ultra is easier than going out to do the same type of finish, age group versus age group, in a marathon. But in terms of nailing it, you can nail a marathon much easier than you can nail an ultra. Not even close.
And nailing an ultra is a little subjective, right? Because there's typically terrain and undulation. I'm going to agree with you. I think, let's call it running well. Going out and competing well is easier to do in like the lower end of the ultra spectrum than the marathon. And by easier, I don't mean it's easy whatsoever. I think people get scared. The marathon's scary enough. Then you think of projecting beyond and you're like, like 31 and a half miles? Are you kidding me? Roughly a 50K. I had an athlete run a marathon yesterday, and I bring this up. It wasn't an A race. It was a training race as a by the way en route to many other things. She likes to jump in a bunch of crap. One of those, Taylor, you know who you are. Over racer, classic. Taylor, again, this is not a surprise.
Cedeno?
Yes. And she's come a long ways, but that girl loves
Congrats,
to race.
Taylor.
Anyways, and she made a comment about how this was much harder than any ultra she's ever done. A road or a packed gravel marathon. It has to do a lot with, one, the monotony, two, the exact same stride over and over and over, fatiguing the minute little spots on the hips and the legs and all of that. Whereas in the ultra, a lot of times, because of the place they occur, you have a lot of lateral movement. You're not repeating the same stride over and over. You have distraction of terrain. And perception-wise, the ultra, at least the entry phase ultra 50K, shouldn't be as scary as even going out and hitting nailing a road marathon, because that's so precise and so finite. And she just made that point. I thought that's interesting, and I agree with her. And then you kind of echoed the same thing. So that's why I posed that question.
Yeah, it's a good question. And just the way the masses approach a marathon versus an ultra are night and day different. On the roads, running a marathon, everyone wants to know what your time is or your time goal is. What pace are you trying to run? Because you try to run the best you can run and hopefully you don't blow up at the end. Where the ultra is the opposite. People try to run the safest they can run so that they never have to even worry about blowing up. They will walk early. That is totally accepted. They're going to snack early and often. They're going to talk with each other. They're going to wait at aid stations and help each other. And so just doing it, completing it, having fun, way easier on the ultra scene. Yep. Racing it's where it gets tricky. But marathons are designed to give you a horrible experience because there's pace groups. There's a goal sitting right in front of you. Hey, if you could just run with me, you're going to do great. And then they drag you out into deep waters and your body breaks down and you cramp or you bonk or you hit the wall and you have a really, really miserable last few miles. Where in an ultra, people stop and they smell the flowers along the way.
Yeah, the marathon is the equivalent of a math test. It's very black and white.
Yes.
X and Y equals Z or whatever. You get it right or you get it wrong. The ultra is the equivalent of like a written whatever in your language class where the teacher combs through it and grades it and gives you a subjective grade at the end, right? It's like, it's not as harsh verbatim. So I think it should be friendly. If any of you have never run one who's listening, I think the ultra space is like a very friendly, inviting space. But we're not talking about friendly, inviting. We're talking about crushing and killing your competition in your ultra. Yes. But I just wanted to make it sound approachable so that people who have never done one get some buy-in to listening to us jabber here coming up. Because I could see some people right, I'm never doing ultra. Like, I'm never going to do that. Well, yeah, you might want to think twice about that. So, yep.
The race report of a marathon is almost never, well, I wasn't having a great day, so I walked it in and just had so much fun at the aid stations. Met a lot of great people out there. You either step off the course or you hate your life the last hour if you're crumbling. Where that race report of the 50K or 50 mile, or it's met a lot of really great people, met this guy from Tennessee and we chatted the whole time. That doesn't, you don't get that story as much from the marathon. Mm-hmm. And so there's just a different level of enjoyment, but we are not talking about enjoyment today. We are talking about running your best, absolute best peak performance, not enjoyment. Because we're the type of person today in this episode that gets enjoyment from success, not from building relationships out on course.
From crushing others'
just for today,
hopes and dreams and souls out there. At least that makes me happy.
Soul taking.
Yes. All right. So we just came off the marathon. We broke that down. If you haven't listened to that, I think that would be kind of an important one to maybe set the tone for this conversation, although you could listen to this as a standalone. Mm-hmm. But let's start with like high level 10,000 foot view scenario. Training for the ultra. What are the boxes that need to be checked in your weekly training schedule to set you up for success? Let's start there.
Well, can I just say the unpopular opinion right now?
Sure.
Can I do that?
Yes.
If you starters, easiest way to wrap your mind around ultra training is train for a marathon on ultra terrain and extend your long run. That's how it started off back in the day. People found out it didn't work that great, and that's what it's reverted back to now in this day and age. Now that just like the marathon, the ultra scene has gotten really fast. People went out and were unprepared to survive the rigors of the course, and now that they can survive the rigors, they're back to training like marathoners. So you have to check the threshold box. You have to check the volume box. You have to check the time on feet box. But now you must also check terrain. And that will be the biggest difference between trail and road. And that will be the biggest differentiator between success and lack of success, especially in the second half of a race, is how well do you apply marathon-specific training theories to the terrain that you're going to run on race day?
Well, as soon as you kicked it to me, no matter what you were going to say before kicking it to me, I was going to say 3 words, which is race-specific terrain, would be the biggest differentiator.
There we are.
And you stole it from me like you always do. I got to stop kicking to you first on these things. I just got to start talking, steal.
I got to start hosting the next one. I'm going to host. I'm going to kick to you. And then I'm going to be able to say, oh, man, that's what I was going to say.
I like kind of, steering the ship. But I agree with you 100%. Volume layered throughout your week. If we're looking at the entry level ultra distances, what would that be? 50K to 50 mile, which, God, 50 miles an entry level ultra. That's a oxymoron in itself. Right. But I think the way it probably differs is the race specific terrain, which is, very crucial. Accessibility is a big thing. A lot of these ultras take place on trails and technical trails. For starters, you can find the rare road ultra or the backyard ultra that happens on pretty tame terrain. But for the most part, what would you say? Like 4 out of 5 ultras take place on the trails on notably technical or undulating terrain. 4 to 5 at least.
Yeah.
Maybe more,
sounds right?
Let's just throw that 9 out of 10 maybe.
Yeah.
So the biggest transition for those listening is instead of walking out your front door every day, is actually maybe getting in your car and driving to the local, whatever it may be, to get on race-specific terrain. And I think in this space, if you're going to nail it, once a week is great, sure, for your long run. But if you're going to nail it, race-specific terrain for your quality sessions and then race-specific terrain for your long runs, maybe they're combined together, are going to be like pivotal parts of this. And as you outline, like, how do you take your marathon training and then convert it to, let's say, ultra training on specific terrain? And I don't want to get too far into the specifics, but it could be something as simple as you're going to go do a 7-mile tempo progression at marathon pace and cut down. Well, now you're going to go hit the trails at ultra effort or pacing effort, more likely than not, and aim to tighten the screws for time equivalent, which let's say could be 50 minutes for you out there. So you can actually translate things one-to-one, but just shift them to terrain specific And then also you start to have to let go of pacing metrics. But first step is race-specific training. I believe that wholeheartedly, because if not, you can be as prepared as you want for the distance, and after a few descents or climbs, you can't access your fitness anymore. So just sort of like cementing what you led with there.
I like that. The way I think about translating training plans, let's say from a marathon to an ultra, is like we're back in the day when you and I were in elementary school and they still had overhead projectors. But the kind where it was a little machine in front of you and you had the clear plastic sheet you would put down on the projector, and it would project up onto the board anything that was there, and you would write with erasable markers, washable markers on there. And oftentimes the teachers would have a template of something they would put down and then write on top of, and you can put templates down over others. So that's the way I think about this. And if you are from a younger generation, then I'm sorry, this is entirely lost on you. But you take the ultra needs and you put it down on the first film. And then you take marathon training and you place it over the top, right on top of it. And anything that aligns perfectly, you get to keep. And then anything that's sticking outside the lines needs to be addressed from the ultra standpoint. And so most of the engine work translates over pretty well, but the skill doesn't translate, the time on feet doesn't translate, and the vert doesn't translate. And that's where you get to get creative. But a lot of it does translate pretty well.
I have not thought about projector slides in, safe to say, decades. That was a good bring me back. I started following this account on Instagram, like Kids of the 90s or whatever. And man, that I have not seen that on there, and I'm going to put in a suggestion. I want to see those slides on that account. It's one of my favorites. So let's...
Very satisfying to use.
Very satisfying. Let's break it down this way then. Let's go right... First of all, when you're talking marathon, ultra, whatever, people right away want to... Like, the long run is going to take... It's going to be like the glorious...
Yep.
Pinnacle to your training cycles. Okay, the long run. And here's where I have a big... I think this very much differentiates from marathon training. And I guess I'll jump right to it. Where that is some of you may have to go and spend more time on feet training for your ultra in your long run. And some of you may actually spend less time on foot for your long run in ultra training. And let me explain that. For me, if I were to hit
I actually don't know where you're going with this. So I'm excited to hear this.
For me, if I were to peak at a 22-mile long run for a marathon, I am well under 3 hours for that. It does not take me 3 hours to run 22 miles at training effort. I'll be done a half an hour short. Okay? That's as long as I need to go. If I'm training for a 50K or more, for me, I believe hitting 3 hours on race-specific terrain is very important for creating the right damage, the back half of that long run, etc. So I'd be the example where I would go further in my long run in ultra training than I would for a marathon. Now, if you're a 4.5 hour marathoner and you aim to run 22 miles, that may take you 3.5 or 4 hours to hit that appropriate stimulus on concrete and training. Whereas I don't necessarily think you need to be going out and doing 4-hour long runs to prepare yourself for a 50K effectively. So we switch from mileage to time. And that's the biggest differentiator. For me, it would require more time on feet. But I think for some people, and this is why I'm trying to make it more approachable, it could require less time on foot, at least for your long run. Do you see my angle there?
I do. Yes, I do.
For most, you're going to end up running more. For most. But I'm not saying for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So with that said, how long do you need to go on your long runs? What do they need to look like? To crush.
I'm with you. I don't really care what your mileage is. I care what your time on feet is. So I will run higher mileage if I were to prepare for my best possible marathon than if I were to prepare for my best possible ultra marathon, up to probably a 50-mile race. If I were to run a 100-mile race, probably going to run a ton of mileage. But my time on feet will be significantly more for an ultra. And that's what I've seen with my own training over the years, is that I need to, for the marathon, for example, I like to alternate between 90-ish minute workouts every weekend and 2-hour workouts. I really like that. I don't need to go long every weekend, but about every other is a 2-ish hour run or workout. Some 2.5, but alternating between 90 and 2 hours.
Yep.
When I'm training for an ultra, I'm having a 90 and a 2 hour every week.
Yep.
I'm getting as many 2-hour runs as I can stomach prepping for an ultra, because they don't all need to be fast. They can be done on technical terrain. They can be done on soft terrain. They can be done on hills. I might get a 2-hour workout and get 7 miles because I'm just dawdling up and down a ski hill. And that is event specific. And I would never even consider doing that if I were trying to run my best road marathon. So my mileage up to a 50 miler might actually drop, but my time on feet is going to go up probably at least 25%, because time on feet really matters for an ultra.
You bring up a good point about like the 90 minutes and 2 hours. And I still want you to answer more specifically, like how long does your longest run need to be? And maybe it's 2 hours in your eyes. I don't know.
Yeah, I can do that.
But I think the ultra that leads the way, and even more so than marathon training, is that midweek long run. You may actually go, like you said, you might go 90 to 100 minutes on a Wednesday for what you would call no reason on race-specific terrain, only to follow that up 3 days later with a true long run where you go 2 to 3 hours on foot. I think the ultras, the best sneak in the mileage is in that midweek long run, starting to layer in more of that time on foot. Not like, hey, I have a quality day Tuesday, I have a long run Saturday, and I squeeze in a bunch of recovery efforts in between. Well, you're going to be racing for 4+ hours. The best in the world are racing, depending on terrain, 3.5, 4 hour 50Ks. So this is where that midweek long run really starts to shine, and it's a lot of extra volume when you take a step back and look at it. So when you mention the 90 minutes and then 2 hours, I very much agree. You will see high-end ultra athletes running 2 hours as their midweek long run even very often.
Yep.
And then going even further on the weekend. So where that midweek long run really shines is once you get to that 50K distance and more. So I do believe there would be a place for that. A great example would be like a Tuesday quality session followed by a midweek long run on Wednesday, fatigued, and then an easier Thursday, Friday, and then go maybe hit a purposeful long run on Saturday. But what do you think? I think 3 hours is enough. I'm going to add a caveat to that, but I think for the 50K, even up to 50 mile, I think 3.5 is really pushing it. But if you layer in enough volume earlier in the week, I think 3 hours is a really good marker to still go out and nail a 50K to 50 mile. What do you think?
Yeah. I have a lot of like rules of 3, it seems like, in running. I have that rule of 3 after a race where you have to feel good for 3 consecutive days after a long run, a long race, 3 consecutive days before you get to start running again, that kind of thing. Well, I have like the 3-3 rule for ultras. You don't need to exceed 3 hours unless you haven't in 3 months. Like if you ran a 100-miler in June, July, August, September, you're racing again, you're fine. But by the time you get to October, you've got to revisit that. I think you get like 9 weeks right around. Some people will argue this based on soft tissue damage and regeneration, but I think you get like 6 to 9 weeks after a run that takes you significantly over 3 hours where you have that in your tool bag. But if you haven't done it in like 3 months, you should go out and do that. I think you should go out and reacquaint yourself with how your socks work, how your shoes work, how your pack sits, how your legs break down, how your fueling breaks down after 3 hours. So I do believe that, the rule 3-3. You don't have to exceed 3 hours unless you haven't done so in 3 months.
And a lot of people will do so even like on a race course, right? Like their breaking 3 hours will be their last 50K. And then 3 months later, they might race another trail race that takes them 3 hours, for example, a steep mountain race. And so a lot of times racing can be that stimulus you're talking about. So how long would it be then? Like in your opinion, what was it, 4 hours? Is it like one crack at 4 hours every 3 months? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, for me personally, it's 3.5 to 4 hours.
Okay.
Going anything past 4, going past 3, you're already playing with fire. And that what you're gaining physically is very small. What you're gaining mentally is pretty big, but what you're risking physically starts to raise every mile past 3 hours. So 3.5 to 4 is still in that range where you can recover from that in a week and be fine and move on with training. But anything longer than that, especially with downhill or with any amount of effort, and now you're playing with that recovery game. And the biggest thing about ultra prep is to accumulate as much as possible. And so you don't ever want to lose 2 weeks at a time or lose 10 days. And so I don't see there's much reward going past 3.5 or 4. So yeah, 3.5 to 4 is fine for me. You learn what you need to know by then. By 4, 3.5 at the earliest, you're starting to have everything come due that you did in the first 2 hours. And it sets in, all right, here's what I need to avoid. Here's what I can do more of. This would have become a problem. You start to sense all those things. I don't think you need 6 hours to be able to get ready for this. And again, this is taking us up to about a 50 miler. If we're talking 100 miler, 24-hour race, it's going to look a little bit different.
All right. And I think even if you're consistently hitting, let's say, 3-hour long runs every other weekend, I'm fine. I'm more than fine. I think that's fantastic. Yep. But I do see that the time and place for me, I don't know what it is about that 2.5 hour mark, but I really start breaking down. And that last half hour of the 3-hour long run becomes like supreme durability, mind and body training. I don't know about you. There's something in 2:15 to 2:30, something switches structurally for me, whether I'm running hard or easy, doesn't really seem to matter. The fun starts to suck the fun out of it. And then it's like, okay, now I know how I'm going to feel the back half of my ultra. So 3 hours serves that purpose for me if I'm doing it consistently. So then I want to pose a question. I have a thought on this. I know we've done ultra-specific episodes before, so some of this may be repetitive if you've listened to us for a while. But I do think the place for either back-to-back long runs or what I prescribe my athletes, and they know well, is the split double. I believe that often ultra athletes are mileage or like time stuck, meaning you want to look at your Strava and you want to see 80 miles, just across the board. Like I am just layering it in, which is all fine and good. I still believe in following a trajectory of like maybe 3 high weeks followed by a recovery week, and that third week of high mileage ending with a pretty big stimulus, which requires a down week afterwards. And that's where I stick the split double, which is kind of what I consider cheating, but the best of both worlds. And my athletes have responded really well to it. And that's simply a quality session in the morning, a few hours break, and then 3 hours of slog on feet in the afternoon on race-specific terrain. You end up with 4 to 4.5 hours on the day, but you get to refuel in between. The entire long run is compromised. Usually you're going to feel much better than that on race day when it actually comes around, which makes the racing seem prospectively more comfortable. And so I've become a big fan of the split double. It could be done in a back-to-back long run fashion. Friday is 2 hours with some quality in it, and Saturday is 3 hours of low-grade time on foot. You could do it that way too, but this is my own bias from my athlete experiences. That split double, if you're really looking to up the ante and really reach, I think it's very effective. I don't know if you've experimented with it yourself, but I think if you want to stack fatigue but do it in the safest way possible, I think that followed by a real heavy deload week is like really, really good stimulus. What are your thoughts on that?
I like it because I believe 2 things need to be present in ultra training in order to be able to have the confidence and the preparation to get all the way to the finish strong. And that is that you have to be good at recruiting muscle fibers late.
Yeah.
And you have to be good at maintaining your form late. And yours handles the second half of that. Doing your quality work in the morning and then getting an easy long run means that every single step of your easy long run is spent keeping it together.
Yep.
It's just 100% skill work on keep my form together. Keep my legs turning over. Don't let things sag. Don't let things slow down. Become a metronome under fatigue. And so to that end, I absolutely agree with it. And then you balance that out with quality long efforts where you're getting past 2 hours working hard. And I think that that's crucial to racing your best ultra. Not finishing an ultra, but if you want to be able to crank in the second half of an ultra, your body has to have pathways and muscle memory in place with how to recruit muscle fiber. What I literally mean by that is when you're tired, you have to be able to open up your stride and not have things cramp. You need to be able to aggressively power hike or bomb a downhill or pick up the pace when you hit some sort of gravel path and have your muscles say, we know how to work and bring our friends with us when we're extremely tired. And so those are the two biggest pieces of the long run. Simply dawdling does not get you to your fastest long run or to your fastest ultra. You either dawdle well when you're really tired or you work hard when you're pretty tired.
Well, yeah, and it's hard to sink your teeth into the racing side of an ultra if you're experiencing new things out on course while racing. If you get to 3 hours and you're like, oh my God, my hip flexors are gone and my hips, and it's really hard. It becomes more difficult to truly get a race effort out of yourself if you're experiencing those things for the first time on course mid-race. It's another thing, as Brakken outlined, to induce those feelings in training. We're not looking to murder ourselves every weekend in training, but to be familiar with that feeling. Because once you're familiar with that feeling, oh my gosh, my hamstrings are starting to go on me, or my quads are so damaged from the descending, or I'm having a hard time picking up my knees on this climb because my hips are shot. Once you know it's coming and once you're familiar with it, it's not as scary and you don't shy away from it and you trust that you can still dig in that time versus having to back way off in self-preservation mode. And so accessing some of those things, the fatigue, the recruiting all your friends when everything else is tired, couldn't be more true, and it comes through in the ultra more than anything. Minutes, tens of minutes, dozens of minutes can be made or lost in the last quarter of an ultra for that very reason. Oh, I felt this. It's so hard to pick my legs up, and I can't run uphill anymore because this pain or this discomfort. I think I can because I know what it feels like now. My red alarm bells aren't going off because I've been here before a bit in training. So why don't we just roll the dice and see if I can't hang on to this effort through the finish line? And that's really what it comes down to if you're going to nail your ultra, is you get a third of the way from the finish line and you're like, I don't know. I actually do not know if I will reach it at this intensity or if I'm going to become a crumbling mess the last few miles. But that is how your best ultra is raced, rolling the dice and living in the unknown the last quarter of the race. And on a good day, you pull it off. And on a bad day, you fade home, you still run respectable, and you can hang your hat on that.
Start off the episode talking about things I may have to apologize for, so we're going to lead into one here. I use the AADS acronym for some of the athletes I work with for ultras, and that is your aggressive all-day stride, AADS, AADS. And I just want you to be cognizant of your AADS at all times.
AADS. AIDS?
It's pronounced AIDS so that it sticks in your mind.
Okay.
In my scenario.
Got it.
Right? I know it's not phonetically accurate, but people will remember AIDS. It'll cut through the fatigue, through the brain fog of an ultra. And the idea of your aggressive all-day stride is one that I think is very important to find in training. And you have to find it over time. You can't learn it on one day. Because if you tell someone, go out right now, and there are some athletes that I'm working with who Andy just completed his first ultra on Saturday. And then there are some people that we worked with this over the summer. And there's someone right now who's working with it towards fall, but working on their AADS. And if you tell them to go out and do a loop-based course, I like doing this on a loop. Run the first loop at the stride that you would consider your aggressive all-day stride. I can keep this all day, but it's going to turn into work at some point. So I'm moving quick, but I'm very compact. I'm not taking extended strides. I'm just staying at that stride where it's the fastest I can run with taking no damage whatsoever. No effort, but it's moving. And then you compare that over a 60-minute workout and then a 120-minute workout and then a 180-minute workout. And you learn over time that what I thought was an aggressive all-day stride was just aggressive. It was not all day. But then you get to the point where you're in a workout and you've done, let's say you're doing 5 by 5 mile tempo in a workout with 2 mile rest in between. This is a long, big workout. By the time you get to that third set of 5 miles, or maybe you're doing 5K for an athlete with less volume, you're using the stride to run aggressively at that point. That is not exciting. It's not bouncy. It's not long, but it's just turning over and you're moving well. That's an aggressive all-day stride. And you need to get to the point where you get broken down and run fast to truly grasp what you need to do in the first 2 hours of a race in order to be able to do that stride later. Rather than think, oh no, that wasn't all day. It was just aggressive. And so these long runs, these long workouts are really key to getting you to the point where I'm not bouncing around. I'm not taking unnecessary energy movements. I'm just staying in my correct little template here, and I do not stray from it.
Yeah, that sounds like something that you should be very much in touch with in the moment when you're out there practicing your aggressive all-day stride. Like really being in touch, like, is this actually sustainable? Is this not? And I know what you mean because there is maybe the term is floating. It's a bit of a floating type stride. And floating, I mean, or hovering. I don't know where it's quick, it's light, but it's not, you're not reaching, I guess would be the right. Like the arms are compact. Everything is efficient.
Is how I would describe it.
I wonder how many people can picture him running.
Meb Keflezighi ran like that. He looked like he was never driving forward. Like he was just picking his legs up and down and kind of like circling his arms. And I never understood how he generated power. But he ran the last mile the same way he ran the first mile, and he never ran out of power. So if you ever want to see what an aggressive all-day stride can kind of look at, watch a clip of Meb Keflezighi running a marathon. Now, ours would be greatly reduced from that, but the idea that it doesn't have to break down over the day.
Your best ultra marathoners don't have these big, open, long, flowing strides. I mean, for example, like
they're starting to.
I know. Now I'm actually thinking like watching Jim Walmsley run a 50K. I'm like, dang it, like he actually does. But you go further and you watch Courtney
He's an alien.
DeWalter.
He doesn't count.
You know, Courtney DeWalter shuffles and still she goes and kicks butt at the long stuff. Maud.
She's the archetype, right?
Maud, even like Maud, who's one of the greatest trail racers of all time in the sub-ultra and ultra distance, shuffles her way through. And I still think it's probably the most efficient. I think you could be better at those long races doing the more low-profile stride versus the bounding, like a Walmsley, who's an exception, not a rule. But
yes. Courtney and Maud are the perfect archetype for that all-day stride.
Yeah, I'm hedging my bets there and doubling back a little on what I said. But where do I want to go with this? Okay, so two things we got to cover still here. We got to cover total volume each week. We got to cover the quality sessions, what matter. Okay. Total volume each week. I think to nail an ultra, let's stick in that 50K to 50 mile realm. We could do a whole episode. We're not going to on like the get up to 100 mile situation, but I don't think we do that today. I think you got to reach 9 rough hours on foot. Granted, you're healthy, 9 to 12. However that comes, great. But that 9 to 12 is sort of the sweet spot. Again, this is granted you're healthy. If not, you'll have to replace with cross training to get extra aerobic stimulus in. But what does that look like? Looks like at minimum, every time you're putting your shoes on, you're running an hour, roughly. And then you're having a nice end cap of a long run of 2 to 3 hours. And there may even be a double in there to get to that time. Or you have a nice midweek long run of 90 minutes. Everything else is an hour-ish, give or take. And you have a nice long run. Even with a day off, you're still looking at minimum 60 minutes. Your recovery efforts are all now 60 minutes is what I'm getting at. You can go put an hour on foot any given day of the week, and that's what it's going to take. 9 to 12. What do you think?
I agree. I would even extend down to 8.5 for a fast runner.
Sure.
Hour a day, 90-minute midweek, 2 hours Saturday or Sunday. Great. That's 8.5 hours, I think. Check my math there. But 8.5 hours should be the lowest amount you're running if you want to run your absolute best. We're racing. We're going to race our best. 8.5 hours is the entry level to a great training week. The ceiling is basically endless from there. You see athletes run 20 to 30 hours a week. It wouldn't be for me, but it works. Volume always helps. But 8.5 is the entry. 8.5, like you said, 9 to 12, that is the sweet spot for most people.
Yeah. And where you would get, it is 8.5. I cross-checked that in my brain. while you were speaking,
Thank
which is good
goodness.
for you. Nice job on that mathing there.
I'm getting there.
It's rare for you, so you gotta, I gotta pat you on the back when it happens. You'd get a little more volume in there, and I'll just wedge this in there. Is we haven't gotten to quality sessions yet, so I think we pivot right to that. I think we can leave it as simple as 9 to 12 hours. That quality session is going to be a little bit bigger on the effort and time scale. So sure, all your in-between efforts are 60 minutes, but you may be spending 90 minutes on foot in your quality sessions with warm-up and cool-down and things like that, just because the distance requires it, And so I think we transition right to the quality efforts. Much like the marathon, bigger volume than what you're traditionally used to, whether if you're training for road 5K, 10K, half marathon, you're going to extend duration. Something like Brakken said, which some of you probably glazed over and some of you took note, he said 5 by 5 miles. Or what'd you say, 3 by 5 miles? No, I'm forgetting.
3 by 5 miles, yeah.
3 by 5 miles, that's 15 miles of quality intermixed in a long run, Brakken alluded to. You're like, holy, it's 3 by 5 miles? Yep. 3 by 5 miles, he didn't stutter, or 3 by 40 minutes in the middle of a long run on race specific terrain might exactly be the prescription. So sometimes on those, let's say, standalone Tuesday quality sessions, whether you use an incline trainer, which is very valuable, or you have trails right at your door, or whatever you need to do to get there, I think you're going to get a little more volume in your quality sessions by default. Right? Something that is universal that we can translate to anything would be like, okay, mile repeats. A 5K athlete might do 4 to 6. If you're wondering why 4 to 6, go listen to our 5K episode. Now, maybe a marathoner, you suggest 8. Well, maybe the ultra athlete, translate that to the trail. So now we convert distance to time. And maybe that athlete's doing 8 by 7 minutes. Or something like that on race-specific terrain with short recovery. Who knows? But they just get a little longer is what I'm saying. So you're going to sneak in some volume where you don't even need to plan for it because the workouts, if they're done right, should require a little more time on foot. So that 8.5 becomes 9 is what I'm saying to you, Brakken. Yep. So either way, 9 hours.
Perfect. 9 to 12 hours. You will not regret your choices as long as you stay healthy. And people generally stay healthier training for an ultra than a marathon because so much of it is done off of pavement. So for my first ultra, Kirk, the first ultra I trained for was a 50K on the trail with about somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 feet of vert. That's 4,000 to 5,000 up and 4,000 to 5,000 down. And I just did a marathon training plan off-road. That's all I did. I had a interval session that was somewhere between 3 and 7 minute reps with a roughly 60 seconds rest most weeks. And then I would do a longer threshold session as part of a long run on the weekends. That was it. I had a midweek long run, starting with 75 minutes, building up to 80. I think like 88 is what I got to. Not because I was trying to hit 88, just because that's what the run ended up being. But like between that 75 and 90 minute distance, and I was doing longer cut downs and tempo in the middle type runs. It wasn't flashy. I was just doing marathon work, a lot of race pace work between 45 minute and 90 minute race pace. A lot of work in there. And then whenever I had something big that summer or something strenuous, like a 5K road race, I ran the Dallas Stadium race, the Spartan AT&T Stadium. I did that on Saturday, flew home Sunday morning, went out and did 9 miles easy, 9 mile cut down on rolling trails. If I was going to be sore or beat up from something anyway, I turned it into a big weekend. And other than that, I didn't do back-to-back days. Only on race weekends did I do back-to-back. It's just a lot of threshold work. Mm-hmm. And one of the threshold works per week was up and down hills. The other was flat on a grass old railroad line that had been grown over with grass. And the other one was up and down dirt trails. If I was doing mile repeats, it was 6 minutes up, rest a minute, 6 minutes down. Or half mile up, half mile down, rest. It wasn't complicated. It was just a marathon training plan off-road. And some things were converted to time instead of distance.
Yeah, and I think getting comfortable working hard for extended periods of time in training is pivotal. So I've run 3 ultra distances or further, 50K and up. And if we're talking racing it, some of these rules go out the window. Like, what is my lactate threshold? And I'll explain. Let's say my lactate threshold is 171 beats a minute or something like that. I ran for 4 hours and 3 minutes in my 50K, and I averaged 173 beats a minute for 4 hours and 3 minutes. Defy physiology there. Granted, I put out a heroic effort. But if you are truly racing these things, we're sitting in threshold all the dang time still. Like this, like if you're racing, it's not like I'm going to keep my heart rate at 140 for the first half and then I'm going to dawdle in the 150s. Like I really don't believe that's the case. And why could I average higher than my lactate threshold for 4 hours? That doesn't make sense. Well, I climb, and sometimes on the back half, I was hitting 180 when I was summiting climbs. And then my heart rate would drift down into the 150s on the descent. And so it was spiking and falling. Happened to average over 170. So on paper, it's like I didn't just ride the 173 heart rate line the entire 4 hours. I went above, dip below, went above, dip below. Granted, I burned very hot, and I did run a little hard early, and it cost me on the back half. But nonetheless, I think like if we're talking racing it, sure, you need to give yourself governors and rules early in the race, but getting comfortable, getting that heart rate up and ripping, you're going to race your best. That's required. Like that is required. And so things like these 60-minute tempo runs on terrain or long intervals like you're talking about, like, yep, you're going to race your best. Guess what? You're not going to go sit in the 130s and 140s for the first hour. You're going to leave time on the table. So I think what I'm trying to get across is like being comfortable, heart rate spiking and dropping for long duration, because that's what it takes. That's what the best are doing.
Yep.
So that's
you
a little bit
have
of a
to run
rant.
faster than race pace.
Yeah.
You've got to hurt a bit in training. And it's easy to do uphill. And so you do a lot of uphill work. And the big giant asterisk to your statement is that is on a vertical based course.
Correct.
Courses where you go up and down, you're allowed to go over under. If you're running a rail trail, you better ride your line and you better stay just under for a long time. But if you're in the mountains, if you're on the trails, you're going to go in and out if you're racing above and below where you'd want to average. And that's just the nature of it. And that's fine. But you have to practice that in training. And the single greatest way to do that is uphill and downhill intervals or tempo runs. You got to be going up and downhill. But rest assured that you are not leaving anything on the table by doing marathon or 10K training intervals. You're only helping yourself. The higher you push your ceiling, the higher you raise your floor, the better you're going to race any single distance. And the easier your easy stride is going to feel during an ultra. It's just the way it works.
So how often do you have to touch quicker biomechanical efficiency work? Do you think it's one of these things with the ultra now where it can go every 2 weeks or more? Or do you think you should still be keeping in shorter, faster stuff every week?
I think every single week you have to. If we're talking racing our best. Even if I'm preparing for something like when we talked to Miguel Medina and he did the Ure 100. That is a long, arduous race where most of the race is up and down. There's still so much time to be gained anytime the flats hit. When you watch these high-level ultras happen, the difference between people settling into 7-minute pace and 6-minute pace every time the flats hit adds up to miles by the end of the race. So yes, you have to be a monster climber and an incredibly durable, efficient descender. But if you want to run a fast ultra, you still have to be super efficient running fast. So yes, every week it's mandatory. And it doesn't have to be perfectly flat each week. Downhill speed work works, uphill speed work works, but you must work hard every week. You can't just run 100-mile weeks or 200-mile weeks and expect to race your best. You have to exceed race pace twice per week minimum in training.
200-mile weeks. Get out of here with that malarkey.
Craziness, but it happens.
I'd rather rip my fingernails off. That sounds like a lot of running.
I mean, Cam
Brakken.
Levins was running up to 180 miles a week for his marathons.
Wild. That's the
Craziness.
biggest talent those
But it
humans have
happens.
is the injury-free durability talent. That's for sure. Most human structure can't handle that.
Yes.
I think we started this conversation. I tried to invite the non-ultra people in to like buy in and listen to our conversation, saying, it's more inviting, it's easier, than the marathon, so don't be scared. With that said, now I'm going to hook you in the back, and I'm going to say the ultra scene in which you outlined just briefly is so highly competitive these days that there is this perception that if you're going to race your best, you go out there, you share granola bars with your running mate next to you, you laugh and high five, you stop and take potty breaks just because you want to, and take a picture or two along the way. Nope. In order to race your best these days, yes, you need to stay relaxed early in the race because you can't sustain an aggressive stride the entire time, as you mentioned. It's focused from the gun. It is execution. It is intense. It is output from minute 5 in some capacity. And it's not just like craft beers and mustaches and let's all just giggle together and enjoy being in nature. Like, I've never enjoyed a single course or the view or any of it that I've gone and raced anything long. It is a miserable hellhole of tunnel vision, and it lasts at least the back 2 hours, and you finish and you don't even know how you got there because you were a zombie, partially concussed and like inebriated the last hour. And that's what it is. And I don't want to sugarcoat it because that's what it ends up turning into. And if you're going to nail it, it takes focus from the gun. Yes, the first hour you're relaxed a little and you're saying, hey, thanks at the aid stations and you're encouraging others, but you're still focused. And by the back half, it is almost like this survival with purpose mode. I don't know how else to describe it. So yes, it's a friendly thing. It's more subjective in its grading, math versus language arts, but this stuff's intense now to make it work. And I just don't want to foo-foo the fact that it takes purpose out of the gates these days to go race, especially the 50K. When you get longer, 50 mile, 100 mile, it becomes different. I don't think of a 50 miler in the country or 50K in the country, even the hardest one, hardest meaning most vert, that isn't out of the gates like a shot. The best in the world are hitting it. So just wanted to outline that. I guess if you're going to race your best, those feelings are going to happen. You will be in zombie mode. Every step will end up being painful towards the end. That's normal if you're running well and hard.
Yes, it will be.
Yeah.
As long as we're turning regular road runners off to this concept, I need to finish up by talking about muscular endurance.
Yeah.
This is the biggest differentiator for me between all the other distances is the amount of emphasis you have to put on strength work and strength endurance work. You can run the 5K world record without ever touching a weight or anything other than just pure running. You have to have preventative and proactive weight room work in order to really nail an ultra. And that looks like lunges, weighted box step-ups, weight vest, incline hiking, running, or Stairmaster or stair mill. It looks like running stairs with or without weight. It looks like sled push and pull, backwards walking. The type of things that are not running, but that will allow you to be running after 4, 5, 6 hours. This is the type of work that now has to be present weekly, and a lot of runners are turned off by. But once you experience it, you'll never give it up because it just fortifies your structure so that you can take damage in a race.
I'm glad you brought it up. It's another way to create damage without adding extra miles. And when you add extra damage, you add extra adaptation. And when you add extra adaptation, you just bulletproof. Maybe you stave your bonk off for another 20 minutes because you did your squats. And as silly as that sounds, it's true. And then that lateral stuff, there is a place for things like side lunges or squats, some hip adductor, abductor work, working some of the ankles, or like bounding, single leg hop, some of that stuff, I think becomes more pivotal. But you're right. It just becomes like when you're in the ultra game, it eventually, like in the real long stuff, it's not as much about aerobic output the back half as it's much about like how much structural damage can I handle and keep moving forward. And that's where strength training comes in like immensely. And I think another thing too that we didn't really talk too much about, you hinted at it, but I think in ultra training, again, assuming there's pretty aggressive terrain involved, with most of them there is anytime you're running downhills in training now, unless you're real smashed from previous work that week, like you're opening it up. You need to get accustomed to taking damage going downhill so you're not rendered useless for flats and inclines afterwards. So like really looking to take advantage of the downhill running for one as a speed component, and then two, another way to create damage so you're more resistant to that on race day, I think is just like such a big component of like those long trail races. And we didn't talk about it too much, but like it absolutely needs to be in your program.
Yeah. Yeah, I pretty much alternate my descending in an ultra block between AADS descending and just tear your legs up descending. Like your all day stride, great. Get accustomed to using that early, but you have to overwork and take damage. That's the only way you're going to build up that reserve of impact for race day, because the descents chew up your legs, whether you're aware of it or not. And so you've got to get out ahead of it.
I was going to maybe introduce the nutrition aspect to this conversation because it is an important part of racing your best, but I think we just not, because that could be a whole other conversation. Yeah. Do you agree? Do we leave it alone?
I think we leave it alone. This is just purely training. Should I summate? Because we did wander around a little more than previous weeks. So should I have a quick cliff notes here?
But that seems suiting for the ultra realm.
Twice per week.
Wandering around a little more. Yeah, it's a good, summit, please.
But there still is a template for this, and that is twice per week, you're running somewhere around the threshold range. You're still running intervals much faster than race pace, and you're working it into your long run at least every other week. Long runs, you're not limiting yourself as much time-wise. You're spending a lot of time between 2 and 3 hours, and your midweek long run is getting up to that 90 minutes or 2 hour standpoint. You're shooting for 9 to 12 hours per week of running if you can, and if you can't, you still must hit that, but with hiking or biking or something else on top of that. Muscular endurance training is a mandate. You must be in the weight room. You must be bulletproofing, particularly your trunk area. But anything you can do for your legs is a benefit. And you have to dial in your all-day stride and your ability to take damage downhill.
Nailed it. We could just actually use just that as
what
the
did
episode.
I miss?
I think you hit it. I think you hit it. I think you hit it. I think we could just actually use that minute clip. Forget the rest.
Oh, you know what I didn't say?
What?
You must spend time on race terrain. You cannot get away from it.
I guess we'll keep the whole episode then.
There we go. Screwed it up right at the end.
And I understand, folks, you guys listening, these conversations that we've had, the mile, 5K, marathon, and now ultra, is probably going to answer some of your questions. We probably talked about a few things you didn't think of, and it probably opened up a box of more questions, right, that we're not answering because they're either specific to you or we didn't think of it. And so that's normal. Just know that we're here. We're here for you, for hire. And I said that on the last podcast as well, because it's a confusing, nuanced thing. There's a lot that goes into it, especially given personal circumstances with life and kids and job and wanting to nail everything. And so that's where you have to move the puzzle pieces around appropriately. That's where your questions may pop up because you don't have unlimited time and resources and the perfect terrain at your disposal every day. Like, we get it, right? We're not going to cover all the bases, but at least the big highlight points, hopefully we covered. If you have more questions, you follow up with us. But I think we hit the big things today.
I missed another one, Kirk. And I promise no matter what else I think of, this will be the last thing I say.
Okay.
But I think it's important.
Well, I don't think you should throw the baby out with the bathwater. So why don't you add it in there?
All right. We've talked previously, and we've talked in night school recently about most sessions should not leave you trashed. You should leave appropriately fatigued, and then you move on. And the mile and the ultra are the 2 times that goes out the window for me. I leave at least 2 sessions per week very, very tired in the ultra training. one might be a muscular endurance session, for sure my long run, the quality long run, the longer intervals. These days where you're doing, let's say that 3x5 mile workout plus warm up, cool down, jogging in between, it's a 15 to 18 mile interval day. I'm smoked by the end. My long runs where I'm getting 3 hours in with purposeful work on the back half, especially with some vert, my quads are trashed by the end of the day. I sit between 5K and half marathon training, sometimes marathon style, and I feel relatively good many of the days. That's not the case with ultra training, and it's not the case with mile training. And it's ironic that telling that when I ran my best road mile and then ran my first 50K within 7 or 10 days of each other, I left and talked on the podcast like, these are the same thing. You're trashed in both of these things, and you have to get to bad places in both of these things, and you have to do it in training as well, or you're never going to be ready for it.
You opened up a fun can that we could dissect more, but we're not going to. Because I have a few things I could add to that, but I'm cutting us off, and I agree with you. And it's funny that they're on polar opposite end of the spectrum. It's how much when you get further from threshold, threshold being the centerpiece. Let's say 10K to half marathon, depending how fast you are. The further you get on each way from that, like the more sharp or damaging the training actually has to be. Which is a whole. Don't let us start. We need to cut ourselves off.
But it's why historically, mid-distance runners make decent ultra runners.
Yeah. There's many ways to skin that cat, Brakken. There really are.
And now we know why.
Should we wrap this thing? Are we done?
Thank you, Sir Hot.
Thank you, Sir Hot and Mark. And old-timey families where men came first, which is ridiculous. Thank you all for laying the foundation of our conversation today. And cut.